A lot of owners say, someday I'll sell this business for a big number. But if you really look under the hood, most green industry companies are built to survive the season, not to survive due diligence. Revenue grows, trucks look good, phones ring, and we assume that means buyers will line up, but they don't. And if they do, they're giving offers that you may not like. Well, today we're talking about what actually makes a tree and lawn care company viable through the real story of a business that grew 280% in a few years and was successfully sold. Well, hello, welcome to the Landscape Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm talking to Dan Mello. He formerly owned Seacoast Tree Care and Seacoast Turf Care and had a successful exit. Really awesome fact about this is that he actually grew the business about 280% in just a few years, which is super impressive. And we're really basically the reason we're here today, we're going to unpack, what it takes to build a successful tree care and lawn care business, and one that buyers actually want to buy. And we're going to talk a little bit about operations. We're going to talk about branding. We're going to talk about marketing, all those different things. And one of the things I love about you, Dan, is you are a straight shooter. I mean, it hasn't always been like the most comfortable thing, because sometimes you're like, you really shoot like straight and you're very direct, and I don't take it personally. And we've had some like conversations in our engagement of marketing over 3-4 years where like we've had some really blunt conversations, and I've grown to appreciate that about you. And I think our audience is going to really appreciate that today, because they're going to benefit from you telling them some just like real life things that they got to think about if they're trying to build their business, and what they might need to look at if they're trying to use marketing as the vehicle to really grow that value. So thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor. So thank you.
Sure. So let's first, for in a very short, concise period of time, about a minute, let's talk about for the people that don't know, Seacoast Tree Care, Seacoast Turf Care, and your story. Tell us a little bit, like, how did you end up in this industry? How did you end up owning and building this business?
Yeah, great question. So I come from a farm family in Rhode Island. In fact, there's still Mello's Farm on Boyd's Land in Portsmouth. My uncle's still running it. So my father owned 9 greenhouses. So I grew up in the green industry. I grew up kind of working hard outside, working with plants. Started rock climbing when I was like 13. And I went to, the first time I had been exposed to kind of commercial tree care was at Unity College in Unity, Maine. And then I switched colleges and majors. I decided to go to University of Rhode Island. I enrolled in a horticultural program, and then transferred over to a landscape architecture program. I double majored there. I ended up going to college for about 5 years. But when I was there, I took a class in arboriculture, and I got a job with a guy named Dave Schwartz, Schwartz Tree and Landscape. He's still doing it. He's amazing. And I kind of fell in love with it working for him. He had a system for everything. Nothing happened by accident, and I liked how systemized everything was and how we kind of brought order to chaos, the chaos of doing the chaos tree work can be. And then I graduated from college, moved to North Conway, realized in a short period of time that the economy in North Conway was a little limited. This is back in like 2000. So I moved to the Seacoast in New Hampshire, and basically took a job working for a tree company in Boston. And in a short period of time working there, I realized that I wanted to make that a career. And basically, I would say that my career was defined by 2 companies, that one company in Boston, and then there was a company locally here that I worked for, and they both did pretty good arboriculture, but had 2 different philosophies. And so it kind of opened my eyes to how things kind of could be done. And I lived in the Seacoast. And as I looked at the Seacoast, I, naturally commuting back and forth to Boston, kind of started to do some market analysis on basically who was, performing tree care in the Seacoast. And I felt like there was some market opportunity there. So in 2003, I started, Seacoast Tree Care, and kind of, it started with doing buzzies on the side on the weekends, and I bought a dump truck, a chipper, and a spray rig, and the Seacoast Tree Care was born. And in the beginning, it was me and my dog, and that's kind of how it started. And so it's been, it's been a good thing. It's been a blessing, and I learned a lot. So it's funny how that works.
Yeah, well, kudos to you, like entering the industry 2003 and then hitting the recession to 2008, which is no small feat to get past that. A lot of companies disappeared, and then growing through, the pandemic that we had in 2020. And shortly thereafter is when you and I became associated and started working together. And take me back, kind of like, what was the company like when you and I first started talking? Like, you have like 20 years of experience, so maybe you can talk about like kind of a little bit of the graduation until you got to the point, because when we started talking to you, like, you were doing a lot of things really well, and you had a lot of things going on for your brands, the two of them, which we talked about tree care so far. We'll get into turf here in a little bit, but like, kind of like, give us a snapshot, like, how big was the company? How many people did you have working there? What were your operations like?
Yeah, so I would say 3 years ago, they were two independent entities, two different independent LLCs. I think at that point, I had an org chart with two independent operations managers and sales teams, and then there was a general manager above it, and basically a controller or an office manager. And that's what it looked like. In terms of count, I think we might have been at like 25. I don't know for an employee count. Yeah,
you're running a pretty lean, mean operation at that point in time. When we talked, you guys had worked a lot of your business processes out. But what were when you're at that part, what would you say were the biggest bottlenecks or headaches that you had as a business owner?
I think this is pretty consistent with every business owner. The biggest bottleneck was me. And it was basically, I think, what I've learned in the last, the growth of the company has been pretty exponential from 2019 to my exit in 2024. But what I would say is that in that time frame, I learned how to manage people, and I ended up really getting an understanding around financials. And so when I say that, I think one of my frustrations was what most business owners have, why aren't we making more money? And what I realized was we had a really appropriate gross profit margin, but we didn't have the volume to be kicking enough profit down to the bottom. And so as we grew, that profit margin grew. It just took me a little while to learn that. And I think most of the growth has been around how to manage people and how to kind of treat people well and how to hire and onboard, and sort of having fun with it. Some of the best things that I did was hire people that I really liked that were good people. And I didn't necessarily have a job for them, but they were awesome human beings. And I wanted them in the company. I wanted to work with them. So we would hire them, pay them a wage that would support their life. And we would train them to, fill in a role that we needed. And so those were some of the funnest things that we did. I would say we got a lot better around budgeting. We got, and we got a lot better about sales. We ended up capturing a lot of lost hours. On the tree care side, we captured a lot of lost hours. And over time, we really dialed in all of the analytics you need to be incredibly efficient and kind of run a good organization. I learned how to get people to do things, and in a way where, I wasn't browbeating them, but we accomplished what we needed to accomplish. And I was able to let them do things and handle things. And I just would assign a task and say, when do you think you can get it done? And they would tell me, and the majority of the time, the outcome was better than I had anticipated. And it was usually ahead of budget, or, the timeline. So,
yeah. So started the business 2003, exit in 2024. You and I, started talking early 3-4 years before that. like, at what point was there like this aha moment, or was it from the beginning where you said, yeah, like, I'm building a business because I actually want to sell it someday? Was there a time you did that kind of all of a sudden became like a more of a reality to you?
Yeah. So I think somewhere around when we started lawn care, when I got into lawn care, the way I got into lawn care was we had been asked, we did plant healthcare, and we did plant healthcare pretty well. We had a really good technician. The customers loved this particular gentleman, and so our customers asked us, and we got asked for years to do lawn care, and we're like, well, we don't sort of know how to do it. And then somewhere around 2012, I think, or 2012 or 2014, I'm not sure, I hired my brother-in-law, and he had a golf course background. And so that's when we started the turf business. The motivation behind that was to increase recurring revenue to build the asset value of the company. And that, I started, I think somewhere around that time frame, I started to think about, this is going to become my biggest asset, and I needed to start to steer this thing in a direction that would make it appealing to buyers. And so I would say the last 5 years that I ran it, I definitely was pulling on the levers that I knew that would make the company more appealing to a buyer. And, I went so far as to talking to people along the way, brokers, and, you get approached, and I would ask questions about, what increases a sale price. And so that's kind of what I did. I tried to balance building the company for what would be appealing, but also, like, you have to have fun. And, I think we struck a pretty good balance.
Were there any like turning point moments, anything like, and I'm not just talking professionally, like personally as well, like what was going on inside of you, Dan, and what was going on inside of the business that were kind of like, you look back and you're like, hey, these are the couple things that have happened that I know that this is the trajectory of like how we actually got to a point where we actually built something that someone would want to acquire?
I think when I started to see how much recurring revenue we had, what the percentage was, I started to know that we were pretty appealing. We had at the end, we had quite a bit of recurring revenue. I started to see the company become more profitable. The last few years, we had started to have like a really dominant presence in the Seacoast. So I would say in the last 3 years, it kind of came together for me.
What were some of the painful realizations that you had as a business owner, like as you kind of grew personally, looking at yourself as a business owner, as a team leader? Like, what were some of the things that you were like, looking back now, I'm so thankful that I learned this lesson and struggled through this and pushed through and tried to change?
I'm thankful for it all. I'm thankful for the good moments, and I'm thankful for the bad moments, and what I tell people is, it's the hard things and the tough lessons that stick with you and you never forget. You don't remember that year that you crushed your sales goal and, you grew by 20%. But what you remember is when that key person comes to you and says, I don't want to work for you anymore because you're a jerk. You don't forget that. You don't forget the mistakes you make, and you certainly don't forget the mistakes that you repeatedly make. And I made a lot of them. The big things, the big realizations, and I'm still struggling with them now. I think, 2019, we lost a lot of people, and I kind of had to rebrand or rebuild the tree division. We had the key people in that division leave, and I had to restaff it. And that was a hard year. I was on my knees praying a lot through it, and it was hard. Through that, I learned that I wasn't the greatest guy to work for, and there were a whole bunch of reasons why. And I worked my best at kind of fixing those things. And, the other thing that happened with that was, and something that's, I think, incredibly significant and doesn't get talked about when you're a business owner very much, is I realized that my identity wasn't Seacoast Tree Care, that if Seacoast Tree Care was gone tomorrow, that Dan Mello still had a family and had a wife, and I had this whole life ahead of me. And all these ways that I was blessed. And so that experience, going through that, as much as it sucked, I learned a whole lot of really good things from it. And that year was kind of a pivotal, I would say a pivotal year from that, because from that year forward, I started to really step back and look at the business as an entity. Just like you look at a truck, it's an asset on a balance sheet, and that's what it is. So many business owners, I think, their identity is wrapped up and things become personal. They don't make good decisions. I think it's hard to step above it and look at it from a 10,000-foot view. And that was me. Like, that was my identity, was tree care and Seacoast Tree Care and Seacoast Turf Care. And that experience taught me a lot. So the big things are like build a team that you trust, trust those people, and, try to create a job that people love, where they're compensated extremely well so that they want to perform for you because it's such a good place to work. That was the goal. Didn't always succeed. Most of the time we did, but that was kind of the goal. And that 2019 year taught me how important it was to treat people incredibly well. And I had to make some changes to kind of accomplish that.
Yeah, I'm proud of you for, we have those humbling moments in business as leaders.
Yeah.
Where the mirror, and the mirror and the spotlight, whatever you want to call it, it really shines the light on our flaws and the things that we don't want to recognize. We have a decision, are we going to step into those things and be humble and change and just accept progress over perfection, and learn how to essentially just love people in our life a lot better. So that's awesome. I'm glad you did that. Yeah. And I think that whole point of removing yourself of the identity of the role that you're in, whether you're an owner or a manager or, tree crew leader or whatever, stripping that away really allows us to, I think it takes a lot of pressure off. We're able to make better decisions in the roles that we're in. And, sometimes there's just so much head trash, so much past trauma, so much garbage that's just gone in our life that we're trying to use our role in business to try to fulfill. And we're putting so much pressure on other people. And then we end up making really poor decisions because we just have this hole in our lives that we're trying to fill. And we're angry and we're pissed off and we're forceful with other people. We're trying to do that. So I'm proud of you. And I think that's awesome that you did that. So as you started to kind of unravel that and look at, okay, I'm dealing with me. I'm dealing with who I am. Now I'm going to step into this role as a leader and look at the business. What are some of the things that you changed? What are some practical things for our audience? What are some things about services and the things that you offered and pricing and routes and just the operational things that you were now that I'm not doing these things and wrapping my identity in it, these are some things I can see really clearly now that we need to change. What did you start working on?
One of the things we started to do was we started to tie managers to the outcomes of the business. I think other things that we did, we started to take a really good look at leads and up the sales funnel. So if I want to grow the company by X, I need, and our close ratio is Y, then I need so many leads to have the outcome I want. And so, I started to look at, basically just making sure that there are enough leads kind of coming through the company to produce the results that we wanted. And I think we got good at bringing people in, and also kind of the way that we brought them in changed. We got better at taking risks with people, but we did it in a way where we mitigated the risk to us. And I think that was... I think that held me back for a number of years. We figured out how to say, look, we're going to give you this job. We're going to pay you this. We're going to circle back in 90 days. And then in 60 days, and we'll both check in and make sure it's working for everybody still. This is a new role. If it doesn't work, we want what's best for you. Sometimes you'd have to put somebody at ease, you'd have to show them the financials of a pay package. People would be nervous about wanting to sign up for incentive-based pay because it's a little uneasy. And then for some new people, when somebody comes to you with a family, they obviously want their family taken care of. So we would put things in place like maybe a severance package at the end or a signing bonus so that if it didn't work out, they would be taken care of on the exit. So we learned how to bring people in. We learned how to try to make people more comfortable and set up these risks so they weren't quite as risky for us and perhaps not as risky for the people coming in, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, so you're taking calculated risks. Everything's transparent. Things are on the table. People understand what's in front of them. How did that affect, like, your company grew and grew really quickly?
Yeah.
And you realized, like, I can't do this all myself.
Yeah.
I need to put good leaders in place. So tell me a little bit about, like, how did just like the overall identity of your overall staff and the leadership that stepped up, the people that you brought in these situations, how did that change over those few years when you grew so dramatically?
Yeah, well, one of the things you learn is that people aren't plug and play. So it takes time for them to learn a role. It takes, you put somebody in, they're a new operations manager of a $3 million business. It takes them, a year or two to basically kind of learn that role. They have to go through an entire calendar cycle and to kind of see the ebbs and flows of it. And then, certainly office managers, it took them at least that long to see that calendar. So some of the things we did there were like, we got better at writing job descriptions. We got better at writing basically an onboarding document that kind of laid out what our expectations were, the training we got better at. We would make a calendar, what we called a to-do calendar, and their training was all listed out with the timeline of what we wanted them to do. And I put a lot of thought, and my general manager, we would put a lot of thought into what does this person need to learn to do this job. And so we would lay that out, over a calendar year to develop people. And so when somebody walked in the door, first of all, we would talk about that in an interview and determine that in the interviews about what skills that they needed to succeed in that role. We tried to be as upfront about what we were going to require. And then their day one, we tried to have an onboarding letter there underneath their welcome letter so that they knew what the expectation was. Then we would set them up on Microsoft To Do, and it would have the list and the timeline. So again, sort of that SMART goal idea of what the training module is, the timeline to do it. And we would part of all those managers had meetings, that weekly meetings, and we would say, where are you at with your to-dos? And some of the stuff we'd have to adjust, and some of the stuff they would get done ahead of time. So we did that. And the other thing was, I think I had to transition and not step in. I had to let people do things. I had to realize that me working in the business was failure. And it was only if there was a major issue that I would try to involve myself. And because, when an owner inserts themselves in, I think it's like doing things for your kids a little bit. Not that employees are like kids, but they just get used to you stepping in. And so I tried to really only step in the places where only I could step in. So if there was like a really big issue, a legal issue, or a really big HR issue or equipment issue, I would step in on that. Or if there was something really kind of specific that I needed to be involved in, or that they needed a decision, then I would be involved in. So that's what I tried to do. I was looking at pretty actively in the end, what am I doing? And if we're going to grow this company, my goal was by the time I was 50 to be in a place where the company either ran without me or I was retired. And, I was 47 when I sold the company. So I kind of accomplished the goal, which is, great. It's a blessing. But the point of it was that, I had the goal of building something that ran completely without me. The last 6 months that a lot of my discussions when the company when we were going through the sale, I was driving around the country in my camper van, and the company was running, and it was pretty cool. So
yeah, what a great illustration and lesson in humility to make ourselves as a leader smaller than we really think we are in our mind, and really elevate and give homage and appreciation to the people that actually are leading our company when we step aside and let them do that. So that's really cool that you're able to do that. Yeah, I want to transition here a little bit and talk about, like the title of the episode. We're alluding to the fact that you did successfully exit your business, and not Seacoast, but you are a past client of ours. We're still working with Seacoast now.
Yeah.
And that is kind of an interesting thing for us too, because this whole new private equity purchasing companies is kind of relatively new in this industry in the last 5 years. Like, we're seeing a lot more of it. And so that was a different experience for us as a marketing agency too. And we're just super grateful that your team's still working with us. And you did put some really great people in place. I want to talk about that time frame. Like, when did you start, like, deliberately, like, okay, you kind of had this goal after you realized you had something here, you're fixing things, you're putting people in place and growing that. Like, what was kind of like the aha moment, or when did you start deliberately saying, all right, time to go, we're going to find somebody that wants to purchase this business? What did that look like? What were the things that you were doing deliberately differently than just running the business? And then I want to explore a little bit what they came back to you with and how you kind of responded to that.
Right. So, private equity kind of rolled into tree care a couple of years ago. And so I got contacted, and I had a couple of conversations, along the way. And then I got approached in the spring, and, the conversation was kind of like, I'll entertain an offer, but I have a really good thing going here. I certainly don't need to make a change right now. And I said, this is kind of I'd have to walk with a minimum dollar amount, a certain dollar amount to exit. So that's kind of how it had happened.
What kind of things were they zeroing in on when that conversation, when you started to entertain it? Like, what were the things that they were looking at? What did they keep asking you about?
Yeah, I mean, I think they want to see growth. They want to see if you're growing. They obviously want to know, what EBITDA, how much EBITDA is and what the percentage is. They want to know what kind of team you have in place. What percentage of your work is recurring. So those are all kinds of things that they're looking for, and they want to know about you. They want to know what you want to do. So
what do you think some were the most attractive things to a buyer? What were the things that maybe even surprised them, your biggest strengths?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, like, we were growing pretty fast, and they saw the team that we built. And the other thing was we looked good. Like, we engaged, a number of financial firms. Our financials, like, I'm not saying our numbers, but what I'm saying is how organized our financials and how financially driven we were, I think, impressed people. Like, our P&L has things, a lot of things broken out. So you could kind of tell that we were financially diligent. And I think that buyers are financially driven people. So when they see a P&L that's well organized and well thought out, I think they recognize that. Yeah, I mean, we looked good. The website that you guys made was great. The trucks are all well branded. The uniforms are well branded. So, and our financials were what they were. So,
yeah, well, I want to talk a little bit about that because, we talked about operational changes that you made, good financials. You guys had things buttoned up there. You were working on things, improving things, showing growth. I do want to talk a little bit about marketing because, we deal with all kinds of different business owners in the green industry, and everybody seems to kind of have their interests and their strengths and their passions where, like, one owner, you'll tell they're like a very financial guy. One's very operational. Some kind of gravitate to marketing. And I feel like you've been pretty balanced, but I was surprised because kind of your analytical mind, like, you really paid attention. Even before we started working together, you paid attention a lot to marketing. Like, one of the things I just was like, I thought was so cool when we did the tree website is you let us put pink in it. Like, you were kind of like very open to, like, I want to, like, like challenge the status quo of like colors used. And you had some really fun slogans. Like, I remember the one was, when Mother Nature is a mother.
Yeah. When nature is when nature is a mother.
Yeah.
Or,
and then you had like,
welcome to the other side of the fence, or when others can't cut it was one of them.
You had some really fun slogans already. Like there was some creativity applied, and you probably worked with some other people too to do that. And it was really great because I was like, that would be fun. I know how we can work this into the website. I know how we can work this into the video. And we use that because we did a lot of things together. We did website and all kinds of content marketing and Google ads and text messaging and videos and photos and all that stuff. But how did you like involve as a business? Like, how are you sourcing leads? How are leads getting to you? How did that evolve over the time, like leading up to working with us and then afterwards? Like, take the audience through a little bit of kind of like your rethinking and your refocusing as far as your marketing dollars went on those things.
I think we started to spend more. I think once kind of going back to that piece where I said we needed to keep our, like on the tree care side, I had good salespeople, and I knew if I got them on enough appointments that they were going to sell. So I just needed more leads there. So we would just do a broad spectrum of stuff. Like you did our digital for us, you did the branding. We looked really good. I still think like the website's phenomenal. When you're selling a service and you look professional, it's easier to get a higher price point than your competition. Or if you need to differentiate yourself from the competition and you look professional, your site looks professional, it's easier to accomplish that. So, I think, like I said, we started looking at needing more leads, and we just looked at all the different tools available to us, digital being one. We made sure our branding was right. We had a social presence, and we've done some direct mail, over the years. We did a lot with like referrals too. So it's surprising, how much we're getting from referrals. So I don't think there's a secret sauce. I just think you got to be kind of committed to it. They're all different tools. I feel like all the different marketing tools are like, diversifying your investment portfolio. One year you're going to have a lot of interest. The next year you might not. So you got to be out there. We did, we would get on the phone and call people. And I've had a history of, when you start a tree company in New Hampshire and it's the winter, like your winter isn't always sold. And so I would just get on the phone, and every estimate for the entire year I didn't sell. They got a phone call. And so, I think part of our culture too was we got on the phone and we called people, and we did it in a good way. We did it in a customer service driven way. And we would always combine those calls to basically, check in with the customer, build a relationship, but also to be trying to sell them something that they needed, or offer them something that they needed if they didn't have it. If somebody didn't have a tick and mosquito program, we would want them to have it. It makes their property safer. Especially if they had kids. I always tried to basically put it on the minds of everybody that worked for us that there were people at the end of this. Like, an Excel spreadsheet is an Excel spreadsheet, but at the end of this is Mrs. Jones with her 3 kids that has a tree that might be dangerous, or they have kids that like to play in the yard, and we need to make sure that yard is, free of tick and mosquitoes. So I tried to, basically keep everybody focused on the fact that there was a family on the other end of this, and it was our job to serve them. And that's kind of how we did it. I don't know if that answers the question. Hopefully it does.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things I've appreciated is you haven't been short-sighted in like, hey, we got these leads in May. We executed on trying to follow up with them in May and a little bit in June. We reuse that, like those opportunities. Like people have stuff that happen. Like they go on vacation, they forget about it, especially like tree removal. Tree removal, if something's super dangerous or it's halfway down, that's one thing. But like tree pruning, they know they should do it. They often delay that in their mind. Lawn care, they kind of like, I hate my lawn care company. I need to hire somebody else. But then they kind of like, life gets busy and they're like, whatever, I'll just give them another year. And the one thing I really appreciated that you and your team have done is we've been able to kind of take these assets and build this marketing universe of people that you're sending postcards to. We're doing email, SMS campaigns. You guys are doing these call campaigns. You're like, I'm not just going to let these things pass me by. Like, just because they told me no now doesn't mean they're going to tell me no later. And you guys really do take that to heart.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that you pay for this stuff, and like, you know, that was kind of, if you know, whatever it is, if you send a postcard, that postcard costs 60 cents. That campaign costs money. Every lead that we came in, you know, it was more so that discussion about clients was more into tree care, because that sales cycle is different. We would pay an arborist to drive out in a vehicle to go meet with a customer, to go give them an estimate. And so all these things happen further upstream to get that phone call in. I spent money with you to make the phone ring. I paid somebody to answer the phone and input all the data. I paid somebody to go to that property. I paid somebody to create that estimate and to follow up on that estimate. So you'd be damn sure that I'm going to keep on that database, and we're going to keep coming back to them, because we had spent money to acquire that name and that contact information. So it's just good business.
Yeah. One of the things too, like I've appreciated too, like you do understand, and sometimes it's fun. We'll get into this in a little bit, like put pressure, like kind of your marketing partners to be like, I just spent this, I want something to come out the other end.
Yeah.
But one thing that I do appreciate about you, we'll talk about that. But one thing I do appreciate about you is that you do understand that these exposures to campaigns and all the work that you've done from a branding perspective aren't just a marketing function. Like, they are affecting the sales process.
Yeah.
So as you look back and you think about, you know, from the buyer's perspective, like, how much do you think that branding, that repeated exposure, how much the visuals, the content, all that stuff, like, how has it directly impacted your sales team's ability to actually be able to close deals?
Yeah. Again, it kind of goes back to the website, all the marketing material, portray a certain image. It you know, one of the things I learned early on was that a picture conveys 1,000 words. That's a saying, right? So, you know, one of my early criticisms of other people's marketing was that they would have websites with this enormous amount of copy, or a mail piece with an enormous amount of copy, when you're basically trying to turn around and say, we're good at what we do, we're going to treat you well, and we're going to, you know, we may not be the cheapest, but we're going to be fair. You can convey that in a picture pretty quickly, as opposed to somebody having to read a paragraph, and nobody reads a paragraph. So within seconds, somebody takes a mail piece or goes to a website, and they kind of know what you're about, and they kind of get a feel. And so I wanted people to come to our site or see our material and get kind of who we were about. And that message, you know, our core values are like, you know, humility, excellence, safety. I wanted them to get that. You know, I was pretty adamant about the photos we used in any kind of tree care shoot. Like, they had to be OSHA compliant. There could be no, like, you know, OSHA violations on stuff. So we were adamant about what we put out there. We wanted to portray a certain image. So that's just how we did it.
I appreciate your dedication and passion for the process and going through it. And you've always been like like I said in the beginning, you're a very straight shooter. And like, I love transparency, you know, like, we've had some times, and if a marketing partner doesn't tell you that this happens, they're just flat out lying. But there are times in an engagement where things don't always work out the best way. Like, you're both trying to accomplish the same thing. You're both trying to make leads come through. You're both hoping that lead quality is good. And, you know, I'll be completely honest. There were times where, like, oh shit, Dan just texted me. What is this conversation going to be like?
Yeah.
And, you know, like, one thing I've come to appreciate, you know, like, I think if anybody's dealing with anyone in New England, it's kind of like the way you guys are just like blunt. You have to get to know those people and then realize there's this soft, really compassionate core to the person, and you can't take it personally or whatever. And you're like, hey, here's a problem. Let's tackle it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was like, I remember the first couple times it happened, be like, dude, what's going on with the leads? It's not working out the way I want it to be. And you would like be very blunt with it, but I really appreciated it. And I had to like kind of translate for the team. And I'd say, listen, don't take this personally. We're going to work on this together. And it's a problem we're all going to solve together. So don't allow like tone or certain phrases used or silences to interpret anything. Dan, we just all want the same things here together. And we had some really blunt, honest conversations. It was kind of, I don't know, maybe somebody would have thought it was tense back and forth, but what was your perspective as we kind of stepped into some of those things and tackled them, saw some success, some things struggled a little bit, but what was your perspective as a business owner as you had to walk through that?
Well, so, look, I think you said it pretty well. It's just a problem, and we need like when you're running one of these businesses, you need what you need. And so the question, like when we went through some of that stuff, first of all, everything that you told us, how everything came together, basically proceeded the way that you told. Like that's one of the things that I always appreciated about you. You were honest upfront about what the expectations were, and it played out pretty much exactly the way that you said it. Your team was excellent. But like kind of going back to it, running a business, there's some math to it. I need a certain amount of leads to generate a certain amount of sales, to generate a certain amount of revenue, to have a certain amount of profit. It's just business. The thing about some of those conversations were more like, okay, this is what we're doing. Here's what the problem is. Are we doing everything correctly? Let's check that off the list. And literally, Chad, on some of those things, like I was checking to make sure that the phones were ringing, like is everybody's email going into the right bucket? Are the extensions correct? Like some of those things I would check before I got on the phone with you to make sure that that wasn't the issue.
Yeah.
But some of those conversations are we doing everything correct that we need to do from a best practices standpoint for marketing, for SEO, for all the things that we're doing? Are we doing best practices? When you get to a yes there, then it's like, okay, so is this a market issue? Is it across the country? Is it geographic? And if it is this just a spend issue? Do I need to spend more to get where I need to go? It's not super complicated. Again, that's stepping outside of it and taking the emotion out. But yeah, I mean, I got fairly direct because I like to win. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. We're competitive
and like
people.
You did too. And we got through everything. And I think a great relationship. Your team was phenomenal. So, like a great relationship was born.
Yeah. I appreciate everybody that has contributed to your success at Seacoast Tree Care and Seacoast Turf Care. And, we have some hardworking people here that I really appreciate. What would you say, like, if someone's watching us or listening right now, you've made some points about great things to do in your business, and one of the things, marketing, that's our specialty. So I want to kind of hone in on this. I mean, like, what would you say to business owners? Because we've had conversations too about the company that acquired you and the marketing investments that other partners make or whatever. And they've made some comments that like, this is a big priority of yours. Like they know that you guys spent a lot on marketing and you've paid a lot of attention to it. What would you say to someone that's listening or watching this, that it's kind of been somewhat of a priority, but not a lot? Like what are some things that they should just immediately, like 3 goals they should make for this next year?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you have to have a digital presence. Like that's a non-starter. Like you have to be able to be found online. I think you gotta look good. And you gotta do all the like, ultimately, if you're doing all the marketing right, you gotta do all the other things right. You gotta answer the phone within, 1 or 2, not more than 3 phone calls. I mean, or 3 rings. All those, the follow-up and how you answer the phone and all those things need to happen. So, if I were to say 3 things, digital presence, good branding, kind of, and answer that phone. Like, and I guess the other piece is, to grow a company, you have to spend a little bit of money on marketing. I think one of the things I saw that never made a ton of sense to me was the economy's bad and we're going to retract our marketing spend. Like, how does that work? Like, I need to be out there more. I need to be selling more, not less. So why would I spend money? Why would I pull money back for the phone to ring less? That never made any sense to me. So
yeah. You made a lot of great decisions just to grow a more valuable business, whether you were going to sell or not. I mean, I've seen it. I've witnessed it. We've talked about it today. So, all right, you're now, you're kind of somewhat involved or kind of out of the picture. Like, tell us, like, what has life been like post-sale for Dan? And what are you doing with all of your time right now? Because I know you're busy. Like, you can't sit still. So, like, what's going on now?
Yeah. So I sold to a private equity platform called Lawn Pro Partners. It's a great group of people. The other presidents are awesome. We've got a really good team. Again, blessed there. It's just been a great experience. Anna's a consultant in the platform still. So I help a little bit out with the platform. I have a friend that owns a landscape company locally. And he's kind of he's in a spot where he works a lot. And so we're trying to build his team. So I just meet with them, on a kind of bi-weekly basis and try to coach them and help him kind of do what I did. We have quite a bit of travel planned for 2026. We're going to kind of pick up and go to Europe. Awesome. And then I started working towards a master's degree and just trying to, I pick up my kids and drop off my kids from school a little bit more and take them to their activities. So it's crazy how busy that keeps you. Like they're going a couple days a week. They're both going in different directions, and it feels like every afternoon I'm moving somebody somewhere. And my wife is still working, and so I'm just kind of taking it on and giving her a break. But that's kind of the long and the short of it.
It's good to see that you're tackling this new stage in life with the same level of passion you've attacked your business, and seizing all the moments and all the opportunities and new things that you didn't get to do before. That's super exciting. I'm really happy for you. Again, super thankful for the years that we've worked together and continue to work with Seacoast, and wish you and the team there nothing but success. So I really thank you for coming on today, telling us your story, and showing us what it takes to grow a successful business that someone wants to purchase.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been great. And thank you, sure. Thank you for all the work you did. And thank you, thank your team. Like, you guys did a lot of really good work, and you're still doing good work for us. So thank you. You were part of the process. You were part of the story and part of the success. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome.